Hey guys, LF here again. Today I want to talk about the pitfalls of the current RO3's development. I know a lot of you have come here to watch the content I've made for RO3 so far, so let me tell you a little bit about myself so you know just how much I care about this IP. Well, to start, I have a Facebook album full of Ragnarok screenshots, but deeper into that, I came from a broken family in the beginning, and the only thing that really kept me off the streets and taught me valuable life lessons was Ragnarok Online and the people that I played it with. On days where I would go hungry, I would be fed by the guilds that would hire me to play for them, not just because of my own personal skill with the time that I put into the game, but also because they would all look out for me. We would all have Christmas parties together, New Year's parties together. Ragnarok was really good at building and strengthening communities. All those people I still talk to this day. I keep up with their families. And I could dive way deeper into my history with RO, with the amount of times that I've dated people in the game, including the life lessons that I've learned from a dear friend of mine at the time, who was actually my first transgender friend who worked as an escort in Manila. And it's just a lot of crazy stuff that happened in RO itself and things that happened outside of RO that were caused by RO on the outside world. But that's for another video. Now that you know a little bit more about me and why I love this IP so much, it's time to sit back, grab a snack, and let's talk about RO3. My first point that I really want to tackle is the autoplay. Let's tackle this one first, as this one's a big one. I personally dislike autoplay, but I get the concept behind it. Autoplay kind of bastardizes the concept of adventuring in an MMORPG, which is what the genre is supposed to be. You're no longer on Earth, you're in a whole different world as an adventurer, and you carve out your own path in this new fantasy world. The biggest sense of accomplishment on a day-to-day basis that people feel in our MMORPGs, or well, let's not even talk about MMORPGs, let's talk about Ragnarok Online. It's grinding. It's putting in the time and effort to reach a goal. Whether that's solo with a party or with your guild, whether it's because you have your own personal goals or you want to get stronger because you want to do it for your guild and be able to help out a lot more during castle sieges or boss hunts. That's what helps build a sense of community and a living, thriving world. That when you meet people out there, you know they're people and not bots. It makes the world feel alive. And it makes you care for the world. It's not just another backdrop for the game that you're currently playing. So what's the solution to this? It's actually pretty simple. It's already being done by another Korean MMORPG, Black Desert Online. BDO is really good at making it so people who don't like to grind can still make reasonable progress while AFK. Among other activities, AFK fishing being one of them. To put this into context, a full 24-hour session of fishing with the proper life skilling setup would usually net you around 4 billion silver a day, give or take. Manually grinding nets you 1 to 3 billion silver an hour depending on your gear and depending on the level of the grind spot that you're grinding at. And it also depends on the demand for the item drops on the market as well. What this does is that it rewards people who put in the time and effort, but it doesn't invalidate people who don't have as much time and want to take progression nice and slow but steady. They also have a system called Agris Fever, which is a currency that you get about an hour's worth every day. It essentially more than doubles the trash loot you get, so even if you only do an hour of farming a day, it still feels impactful. You still earn silver, or zenny in Ragnarok's case, and not only that, it keeps the concurrent player base count high to make even the gaming company happy. I know the metrics matter for these gaming companies. I know that people will probably look at, let's say like Steam or something, and look at the player base for that game, and that player base keeps maintaining high amounts if people can make a reasonable amount of progression, even if it's doing something that's AFK, but it's doing something that's AFK that people know that that are doing it are actually AFK. Whereas if they went out into the world and they see somebody grinding at a spot, they know for a fact that that's a person. They can interact with that person. They can even talk to that person. They can even ask questions to that person, and that person will most likely just respond to them. And it's the same as like venturing out into this world in your own adventure, and you meet other adventurers out there and you can relate. Again, it just makes the game feel so much more alive, and it's not counterintuitive like auto-playing is in an MMORPG. And then we have number 2, dailies. The bane of player retention. Dailies were made by gaming companies to encourage players to log in daily, which they wouldn't need to do if they did what I suggested in point number 1. Dailies give direction, which is nice at first, then it just becomes a chore. They help in convincing your player base to log in every day until they don't. Once they don't, or once they go on vacation, they get a huge sense of relief that they don't have to do chores in a video game anymore, and they just don't come back. Nobody likes to feel that. If they miss a day of dailies, or a week, or a month, that they are permanently behind that amount of dailies, and no, nobody likes to pay premium currency to catch up either. Which leads me to my next point. Time-gated content, which dailies are as well. Man, game devs, if you ever want to make your player base feel like it's impossible for them to catch up if they come back to a game after a few months, this is how you do it. Not only does it discourage people from actually coming back and playing your game, it encourages them to just like wait and buy accounts, RMT accounts, that are going to be cheaper because it devalues in order to get back into your game, instead of actually starting from scratch and playing your game and spending along the way because the progression that they feel is meaningful. Just look at Throne and Liberty. It's the most recent case that you have. The amount of people that quit the game after coming back from Christmas vacation was so bad that not even their first ever huge expansion was enough to stem the bleeding. And they've just been on a decline since then, which also leads into the manual grinding part. RO1 has always been a sandbox MMORPG. They dumped you into a world to do whatever you please. That's why people keep going back to it over these other iterations. Nobody likes being hard capped by a stamina system. And if you want a more clear example of that, then you only need to look at the Google Trends charts. Just look at the trend of Ragnarok Online over the years, starting from 2016. You can see RO1 has always held interest. You have to realize this is a game that released in like 2001, 2003, right? Depending on like what country you're at. And look at that, like at 2017, it was still up there when it comes to searches, and Ragnarok 3 at the time, people were already anticipating Ragnarok 3 because Ragnarok 2 was such a flop. And as you go along the charts there, you can see eventually the other iterations start popping up. You have your Ragnarok M Eternal Love, which, you know, as for something that is kind of like the closest to RO1 that they've made, besides like with the disaster that was RO2, there was some interest in it, right? But the hype behind it and the interest behind it was not even anywhere near close to RO1 in November 2017, 14 to 15 years after its launch, right? And you can see the interest goes all the way down, and then eventually we get ourselves Ragnarok X generation, which generates far less hype than Ragnarok M. And as we keep going here, the interest keeps going down and going down. As you notice, as it keeps going, it just keeps going down and down and down. And then here we go, Ragnarok 3 actually trumps everything else, because people, after the release of Ragnarok M Eternal Love, after the release of Ragnarok X Next Generation, people are still hopeful for an actual successor. That means that they do not identify a Ragnarok M or ROM and Ragnarok X or ROX as the actual successor of the game. People are still hoping. You know what this means? This means that Ragnarok 3 is the last and final hope. And as we keep going down the charts, you can see consistently people over the years are just hoping for a Ragnarok 3. They have zero hopes. And while they're hoping for Ragnarok 3, They don't really care about ROM. They don't really care about rocks. They don't really care about like Rue Global at this point in time still, until like the great hype for Rue Global, which ended up being a disaster, as we'll see like later on. But while they're hoping for RO3, look at what they're doing here. They're going for Ragnarok Online still. RO1. That's a sign. It's a very telling sign. And eventually we get to the part where Ragnarok Origin Global, which, let's be real, was really just Ragnarok C, and it was a bit of a scam. It gets up high. And guess what? It was hyped up. There was some really good marketing for this one, and we get really good attention for it in March. And then the pay-to-win systems get into place, and look how hard and how fast it crashes. March, April, by the time it's April, the interest has plummeted. And you can just see it just goes all the way down, and now it's like all the way down there. And you can see, because of how much of a disaster and a failure these games were, look at it again. What are people pining for? What are they looking forward to? Ragnarok 3. And while they're playing while they're hoping for Ragnarok 3, they're playing Ragnarok 1. What does that tell you? Is that Ragnarok 1 still holds the secret and the ingredients to a successful Ragnarok game. And as we continue, you can see ROM, we see like ROM Classic being announced there, the supposed Zenny only server, which kind of like defeats the purpose because you could buy Zenny with real money anyway. But you know, it's whatever. It still doesn't really hold, and you can see it plummets as well, all the way until it just becomes completely irrelevant. And the constant, again, is people pining for Ragnarok 3, while, again, reverting back to Ragnarok 1 because it is the constant. It is still something that gives them what they want. And now we can see the rise in searches for Ragnarok 3, and people go over to Ragnarok 1 to kind of relive exactly what they want. And guess what? They're gonna find exactly what made them love Ragnarok 1 at this state, and they're gonna look for it in Ragnarok 3 when Ragnarok 3 releases. And when Ragnarok 3 does not have that, they will quit the game just about as hard as they quit Rue Global as soon as they found out that it wasn't a true successor. That's what happens. Gravity, I hope you understand that RO3 is your final chance. There's nothing else after this. The IP that has hyper-carried your company thus far is on its last legs. Restore it before it's completely destroyed. That is to say, your legacy. But why else did I show you that chart? Well, it leads to my next point. Number 4. Theme park style MMORPG. Look, I saw the dungeons. They look nice. Actual interesting mechanics, but it does look like kind of a joke thematically when you realize that what Ragnarok is supposed to be. It's supposed to be this dark, brooding type of like world, and which was the main reason why the kingdom even recruited adventurers to begin with. But let's get to the point here. I can already tell you that you want us to do X amount of dungeons every day, or we lose progression. I discussed some of this in point number 2, but let me dive into this some more. We already had a theme park style Ragnarok Online. It's called Ragnarok 2. I don't need to emphasize how much of a clown fiesta that was. Stay true to RO1 and what helped make it successful. A true sandbox MMORPG. Ragnarok does not work as a theme park MMO. It just doesn't. That's not the player base it pulls. The same player base, mind you, it had at the start. It's still us. We're still the same people. We're older now, but we still love the same things that we loved about RO1. Listen to us, and we will play your game until the day we die. Every single mistake you've made so far can be redeemed by RO3. The pay-to-win slop that you've made before this can be a thing of the past if you do this right. Speaking of pay-to-win slop, that leads me to my final point. Number 5. Monetization. Look, I get it. You gotta eat too. You have shareholders you have to report to. But you have to admit, looking at games like Ragnarok Origin, where you've made major power spikes be unattainable by majority of your player base unless they spent hundreds to thousands of dollars, doesn't work in an MMORPG. At least not one that wants longevity and wants to build a legacy. Legacies such as Final Fantasy XIV, Black Desert Online, World of Warcraft, even old school RuneScape. You're gonna get beat by old school RuneScape? No shade to OSRS, by the way, but old school RuneScape shows you how much of a player base an old game can keep if they just treat their players right and when they do listen to their player base. And I do believe that RO still has that setup. Ragnarok Online still has that hold. It still has that seniority in the MMORPG sphere that people will always revert back to it. We saw that in the chart with RO1. People will keep going back to Ragnarok Online as long as it's good, aka RO1, which is still as old of a game as it is. People still go back to it. So if you were to give that to us with way less pay to win, we will stick by it forever. Because you used to look up to people who had sun god helms and god items because you know what it took to craft those. If you change that so people could just drop 1k USD and get it, it becomes a joke. When somebody can drop 10 grand and they now have a pet that can wipe out an entire guild, the game and any mention of competition becomes a joke. You saw that in the first tournament that Ragnarok Origin Global had. It became a joke. As somebody who shoutcasted for that tournament in my own stream, it became really hard for me and for the other shoutcasters, mind you, to try to shoutcast it because like it really was hard to make it sound positive when in the back of your mind you just know that like, hey, by the way, this team, this guild, they just really lost because they got outspent. They lost because they spent 100k USD less than the other guild did, and that's why they lost. And everybody knows that's true. But when you look at back in the day with Ragnarok Online or even in modern day MMOs like Black Desert Online, and you see someone with the Lauer Zeka armor, which you can only get through countless hours of grinding, you respect the effort they put into it, and they feel proud wearing it because they worked for it. And back in the old days, when you would see somebody who's wearing a boy's cap with like with a pipe, you would really look up to those guys because like, wow, like those items really took a lot to get, and the drop rate on those are pretty low. They don't give like the best stats, but damn, they look good, right? In a perfect world, we'd have a pay-to-play system with zero pay-to-win, but I know that's hard to do nowadays. Although personally, I think it's still possible now, but if I have to compromise, I'll at least say this because I know it works. Do not gatekeep or time gate things with the only way to attain those things is by spending money. Because that's how you alienate majority of your player base, and specifically your fan base, the people that love the Ragnarok IP. Look, I'm a nobody. I'm just another player. I'm just a small YouTuber. I'm just another person who loves the Ragnarok IP so much that I'm just wishing that I get to finally see the day where I witness its true successor.
you.